Hello everyone, this is a probably not very quick, but gonna try, video for Resender regarding a power station design for his Return to the End series. Resender put up a video a while back of his extant design involving using trees, specifically oak trees, to generate biofuel to create power, and asked if I could make it any smaller. So I've done a couple of designs since that. This is the first one I started with. It's a fairly tower-shaped design. I tried to get the combination of the actual spawner itself. In there we can see the skeletons spinning around. I don't know how Optifine, because for some reason it crashed my game here. I was trying to combine everything involved in the entire biofuel process into one tower based around the height of killing skeletons on the full damage. This works, but it's not very efficient, so it does include a few of the elements that I've used in later versions. Let's see. Yep. Here's the first golem mini farm that I put together. You can't quite see that because of the glass, but and down there is the golems picking things up as well. So I can show that a bit better at the second design, for which I have set up this handy-dandy little command block because I have a lot of things going on around here. Yeah, a lot of things. So, second design. Here we still have the skeletons dying to fall damage. This whole section here is one chunk in scale. Wait, hang on, that's the third design, which I'll show in a bit. But everything else is basically graded on the scale of this top piece. So everything else, same scale as that intersection, for the most part. So the skeletons come down. They die the fall damage. They always hit the ground at lethal velocity, so to speak, because there's nothing in the way here as there was in the previous design. And then there's these two wooden golems. One is picking up arrows, the other is picking up bones. Putting them in that same chest, which is then getting sorted out by this filter, this diamond pipe, into the two different tesseracts. I started using tesseracts because I realized being in the end, Resender probably has a lot of easy access to ender pearls, so it made a lot of sense to do that. Okay, so the arrows go over here, where they are then pumped out routinely into a number of regulators, which basically contain a certain amount and then shut off, and also output into a device that they're connected to when that device runs low. So these ones are all set to give the recyclers beneath them 4 arrows whenever there is less than 1 arrow in them. So this filter pumps out a batch of arrows that go around, fill up everything, and they don't take in any more, so nothing else gets pumped out and causes lag or anything. Now, whenever these recyclers turn an arrow into scrap, this handy clay golem fetches it out and shoves it into this relay. And again, we have regulators moderating how much scrap goes into these generators, but that creates a bunch of EU for us. But I also have this biogenerator here, because this design kind of fell flat after a while, and I'll explain why in a bit, but the power from the generators goes back into the recyclers, and as we know from Carpenter Station, that creates some excess. The next step was over here, where I've got sort of a main power supply here going. So there's a store of lava coming in. You can make that from most of the nether bees, for example, making simmering combs. And this is also an access for just standard biomass, and these are biogas engines, so they create that kind of power. And that then goes into this energy tesseract, which is main power, which is just what most of the systems run on here, because you need some kind of buildcraft power, generally speaking. And this is where the bones come in. They go into this barrel. I had to separate it by a pipe because it kept attaching, this kept attaching to that. You could just have it on the side, but I was trying to make it one wide to see if I could fit it into another system. And this just turns the bones into bone meal and sends them off to 2 different locations, namely the tree farm and the wheat farm, which has seen its recurrence from the previous design. The way this works is that you've got your wheat growing down here, you've got a bunch of straw golems, which will break fully grown crops. These are smart straw golems, as noted by the red eyes, so they'll also try and replant whenever they can, and I've just got a regular old wood golem trying to pick them up and shove them into a relay, which sends them to another Tesseract. Now, the way this works is that, generally speaking, this will actually work fairly okay without bone meal, which is one of the advantages of this kind of design using wheat, I'd say, because it will run by itself without any kind of addition. You don't really need the spawner or anything. But the spawner gives you bone meal, which comes through this tesseract into this barrel, and occasionally gets pumped out to all of these regulators to deployers. And the deployers don't cover every piece of wheat around here, but they do cover a significant portion of it. I believe this is, let's see, about 16 pieces of wheat get bone mealed each cycle with this. And all of that's controllable from this section over here, but that's not really very complicated, it's just different transmitters. So that gets you wheat and occasionally seeds. I've also got lily pads over here. These are actually lily pads of fertility, but I have my particles turned down. Oh, and I think we just heard... Yep, there he goes, just off by himself. The lily pads of fertility are from Xenos Reliquary, which I believe you've been investigating recently, and they accelerate the rate of growth for various plants. I've been told that if you make a 9x9 where only the center block is actually like a regular plant, it will grow almost instantaneously, which could be of some use. I don't know. I haven't tried it out, so I can't really verify. Hidden beneath this big bulk of trees is the tree farm, which doesn't actually use any bone meal, but it's Steve's carts, so it's just got this little minecart down here, which has an inventory, a forester, and a planter. I'm usually able to access this, but I guess the trees are blocking it. Come on, there we go. So it's just got the woodcutter, a standard coal engine, just fueled by charcoal, and a chest where all of the wood goes, and then that just gets filtered out and sent to the various locations. So apples will go out, and more or less everything else will go straight through it again. But apples and saplings, and this is where things start to break down a little bit, because I didn't put a sorting system of any kind into this, and my desert thinks it's raining. That's annoying. But you've got seeds, wheat, there would be saplings there, and there should be apples here, because this is where apple juice gets made. This is also where the main power part comes in, because the machines here needs some power, well, at least some of them do. So you can see there's an energy cell there, redstone energy cell, which is getting power from main power. So this creates apple juice, as well as the occasional bit of mulch, which goes through to there, and into these machines, which are using mulch as well as what would be saplings and wheat to create biomass. The biomass then goes... see if I can actually try and get to flying again here, because I haven't got my new computer just yet. Jetpack, and I should put this onto NEI or something, shouldn't I? Ultimate solar helmet, there we go. There we go. So, over here we have the Biocenter. Now, this is actually creating its own power, because otherwise it drains massively from main power. So again, we've got a hook to lava, we've got biogas, and we're getting biomass coming in through a tesseract, which is going one way to the engines to power everything, and another way to the refineries, where it is then happily pumped out automatically by the conduits, the liquid ducts here, into the main biofuel section, which is over here. But in general, this system is pretty unstable and fairly unreliable. And for the effort that it goes through to generate power, it's not really worth it. Which then brought me over to the third design, which is over here. And this design is using steam power. So it's not biomass anymore, it's not biofuel, it's just making steam. I've got jungle trees up here, which aren't going to make any apples. They're occasionally going to make saplings, but we don't have to worry about too much of those, because I think I'm actually using some of them for fuel. And it can use bone meal. I've got a tap to the a tesseract here to the bone meal supply. But again, it's just trees. It will grow quite happily, and if you want to, you can stick the lily pads of fertility into here. But this is just same idea with the Steve's carts. They've got a forester. They have a fertilizer if you want to stick bone meal into them. Storage, cleaner for anything that gets dropped, and they're also solar powered. So the way these are working is that they've got a regular coal engine on medium priority and a solar engine on high priority. And what normally happens is that they'll find a new tree and they'll switch over to their coal engine, as you can see, because there's leaves above them, but their wood cutters cut through the leaves so quickly that they tend to have solar energy immediately after that, so they don't actually use up much coal fuel. And what then happens is all of their stuff gets dropped off here. That little rail there is just making sure they always go the right direction. And then they get refueled for their engine, which is using jungle wood, my mistake, and then refueled for their fertilizer and their saplings, which is currently getting overflowed because this has no control over it, but either way that works. Now that is then regulated, because the stock from the carts gets pumped into a relay, which then feeds some regulators, as we saw before. Those are used to manage the amount of material. Any excess saplings go into that relay, which is waiting for a spot to stick them, or it goes into this excess barrel, which is just going to get eventually very full. But because this is the restriction tube, this is the last place they go, so the next place they go is over here, where all of the logs go, which is this barrel, which is currently holding quite a few. And every so often, as long as this relay is empty, which is what this is checking for, empty inventory, this timer will tick over and pull, I believe it's 8 jungle wood logs out of the barrel. That is then fed to the regulators, which go into the induction furnaces over here. Powered furnaces, my mistake. Which is just converting the logs into charcoal, as we can see it just buzzing along there along the pipes. They're all going into 2 separate barrels, which are feeding 2 different solid-fueled low-pressure boilers, which are heating up quite nicely and generating some steam. That steam, this is a slow process generally speaking, but it does work out eventually, because the process is, once it's got some power, it tends to build itself. The steam's going into this gigantic steam tank, which is building up now, as we can see, and the steam is then pumping out into 2 sets of industrial steam engines, which are generating power for the main system, and by virtue of these energy cells, also for an excess system, which is fully charged at the moment. And the steam then also runs into overall 4 different steam turbines. Now, with the number of connections to the steam line I've got at the moment, these aren't producing very much power, but they will produce power pretty consistently for several real-world days, and that is assuming that there's actually still a place for the power to go, because otherwise they just shut down automatically and there's no damage done to the rotor. This has been running for like the past week in this world, and it hasn't even lost 100 of its durability, as you can see. So this will run for a very long while. But all the power from that is then going to this MFSU, which is not even half full yet, and you can see that there's it does have some replaceable parts, or so rather some parts that will break down over time, namely the rotors. But everything else is solid state, will last for a long while, and will give you a lot of power. So overall, this is a system that I would highly recommend versus the biofuel. This is a system that, whilst it will occasionally require repair, is a lot more effective, and I kind of plan to use this inside of Monroeville for my Chaosville series. So sorry I couldn't get you a massively compacted and super efficient biofuel setup, but hopefully this meets with your approval, and I'll see if I can get something else running if you're not too happy with this. Of course, there is just the easiest idea of making a ton of solar panels and such, but I kind of like this industrial look to things, and I admire your determination with the biofuel, but it's just not really worth it. And Dawn, like Buffy's sister, I'm dating myself there. But that's all for now. I shall catch you all the next time a video for some reason appears on this channel. But other than that, catch you next time.